Oh, goodness.
I'm doing a thing for.
All right, we are live for this month's Wager Warriors with our special Sun Stakes Saturday Wager Warrior. We have lots of wagering opportunities for for Sun Stakes Saturday at Mohegan, Pennsylvania, this Saturday, August 19th. We have some special guests today helping us discuss the fields. We're going to discuss races 10 through 14. So we have track announcer Jim, we have Jessica Otten here, and Gabe Prewitt. So we're excited to get started. So thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get started, anyone that's watching and kind of wants to follow along, there are free past performances available on phha.org. So get your free PPs. Like I said, lots of wagering opportunities, starting with a guaranteed $5,000 pick four pool in race 1. There's another $5,000 guaranteed pick 4 in race 6. And then race 11, there's a $10,000 guaranteed pick 4. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to skip right to race 10, which is the Delmonica Hanover. It's a purse of $2,050 or $250,000, 3-year-old filly trotters. Jessica, why don't you kick us off on what you're thinking about this field here?
Well, I think you can't really go against how competitive the field is. For one, we've seen Heaven Hanover now come from well off of the pace, both on a bigger track, winning the Hambletonian Oaks, obviously, and winning a division of the Del Miller. If the pace is set up, I think she does better from, off of the pace. I think Bond was much, much better in the Hambletonian Oaks final. I think she kind of shocked a lot of people because she has been setting some pretty hot fractions. And I think the horse from the Royal Quick Stop and really just had an off day in that Hambletonian Oaks elimination, bounced back well in the Continental Victory. She picks up a new driver, but she's been super competitive with these kind of horses all season long.
Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I think everybody looks immediately to Bond and Heaven Hanover, kind of a rematch there. As Jessica said, Secret Volo is another one who's interesting, coming from the 9 post in the finals of the Hambletonian Oaks. 4th, just a length back, 150 and 4. It's kind of something you got to give a race because we've got a bunch of trainers and drivers here that have been doing really well at Pocono. Tim Teatrick on our stakes nice has been cleaning up. Oka always cleans up here, and Marcus Melander as well. So those 3 kind of going head to head. I think that's where you have to look in this race.
Gabe, what are your thoughts for this
Well,
one?
I think everybody's covered the obvious here, and I'm in agreement. But it looks like the obvious. I think the 3 coming out of the Hambletonian Oaks final, that being Heaven Hanover, Bond, and Secret Volo. I tend to think Secret Volo is the way I would lean. I think she's got the outside post, so I think she'll be the better price of the 3. And she got torched in that Hambletonian Oaks final, and she was still there she lived to tell about it. She was only beating a length. They pulled the shoes, I know, for the first time that day in the Hambletonian Oaks. But, she got roughed up, and she hung around very close late. She was 4th beating a length. Bond, I actually didn't think had much of an excuse. They teed her right up in the Hambletonian Oaks. She actually, she did show a different dimension to come from off of it. But I thought if she was herself off those fractions, she should have won easy, in my opinion, the Hambletonian Oaks. She just raced okay, in my opinion. That's not to take anything away from her. But I just think if she was as good, as I thought she was a little earlier in the year, that she would have gotten the job done there. So I think in terms of value, for me, it's Secret Volo. We'll see, how they end up deciding to race her. But again, I was impressed the way she hung around late after being used so hard in the Oaks.
All right. Well, that's our field of 8 for the Delmonica Hanover. We'll go to race 11 that starts the $10,000 guaranteed pick 4. So this is a good wagering opportunity for anyone betting on Sun Stakes Saturday. So Jessica, you go ahead and kick us off again for this field.
Well, Sylvia Hanover continues to make my jaw drop every time I watch her. I mean, 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, when we saw her show up in the Mistletoe Chalet, she was parked past a quarter, parked past a half, parked past the 3/4, was looped 3 wide, then was able to get cover. And she grabbed on the bit again and she swelled up and, pace woman 26-4, 48-4 mile. And then she came back in the Tompkin years. Yeah, I thought she was beat that night. They got away from her on the front end. She pays back-to-back 26 flat quarters, and then again in the Shady Daisy. I mean, she was only beaten ahead. I mean, she only won by a head in the Shady Daisy, but she was parked past the half, parked past the 3/4, and she really had to fight towards the end against Beach Cowgirl. It'll be interesting to see with Twin V Joe Fresh to her inside. First start Lasix for her. She's coming off a solid win in Lexington. And she's a very dimensional horse as well. So it'll be interesting to see. And another one I would say to keep an eye on would be Charleston. She's also been very sharp this season, even though she maybe not has many wins as the other two horses, but she was really good down in Oak Grove. She was good against open horses and against Harris Philadelphia, and she won a division on the Tompkins gears. But I really don't know how you go against Sylvia Hanover at this point in stage.
Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I made up the morning line odds, and I don't like to go below 2-1. I like to let the bettors do that. But I think Sylvia Hanover, it's going to be odds on most likely, maybe 1-2, and then Twin B Joe Fresh probably gets the bulk of the second choice betting. And then after that, I think odds on Hail Mary is an interesting one. Linda Toscano's had a lot of success at Pocono. Scott Ziron, we've seen him pull off big upsets recently. Odds on Hail Mary's raced well on the 5/8. I'm interested to see two new names at Pocono anyway for trainers. John Balzer for True Blue Hanover. That horse hasn't won yet this year, so she's kind of fighting an uphill battle. And Sweet Amira, Chantal Mitchell. That's another new training name, at least for us at Pocono, kind of competing in these big stakes races for the first time. And this filly Sweet Amira coming off nice wins, including Pennsylvania Sire Stakes action at the Meadows. So, obviously Sylvia Hanover is the one to beat. If you for a long shot play, though, I think odds on Hail Mary might be the one you throw a dart at in that one.
Gabe, what are your thoughts on this
Yeah,
race?
good field. Sylvia Hanover, the only thing I'm concerned, Jim said it right. She's going to be odds on. And, at what point do her antics start to catch up with her? She's a little quirky at times, I think, to say the least. And you put her on a small track, does she get herself in a little bit of a bad spot? That's my concern. So at 2-5, I'm just not sure that I want to take a short price at almost any time at that. But when you keep in mind she's going back to a small track for the first time, I think ever. I don't think she's ever raced on a small track at all. I believe she was at Woodbine all last year, and then her only U.S. starts have been at the Meadowlands. So I have my concerns going at a really short price at a mare that does have some quirks about her. So I think Twin B Joe Fresh. She adds Lasix. She was so good here at the Red Mile last out. Field of 7 there, so she pretty much has stamped herself in the Kentucky Sire Stakes final. So I don't blame the connections here for taking a shot out of town. But I think adding Lasix, I think she's going to get off the gate. I think she'll have the tactical advantage, so to speak. I think she'll be the one there to catch. She may get the jump a little bit on Sylvia Hanover. So putting Sylvia Hanover on a short track for the first time, makes me want to try and take a shot to beat her here on a card that we may have a lot of short prices. So Twin B Joe Fresh, with all that said for me.
All right, that's a tough one to start out the pick 4 on. We'll go to race 12, the Maxie Hemp Memorial, going for $300,000 for our 3-year-old open pacers. Jessica, start us off here.
Well, I'm really excited to see Confederate back. I think this is a really competitive field. I know, Confederate put up a big mile in the Cane Pace, 47-3, 25-4 to win by 4 after, getting a perfect trip. And then the horse that, he sat on his back, 7 Colors, just won the Milstein at Northfield in world record fashion. So, and he blew by him like he was standing still. I think Confederate is, if not the sharpest, one of the sharpest horses in the country right now. And he is a very tactical horse. He's got plenty of gate speed, and he's getting another perfect post to work with. Another 5-hole. I just, I hate to be a chalk eating weasel, but I really don't see how, he gets himself in a position because he's so handy unless he gets away, 8th by 100. I really like him in this spot again. It'll be interesting to see Christchurch, second time Lasix. He's been putting up some really big fractions. Yannick is sat behind him a couple of times now. And I thought he raced okay in the cane pace, just came up a little short. I think those fractions might be catching up to him if he can be raced from off of the pace. And I'm excited to see Stockade Sealster again. I thought he was loaded with pace in that Meadowlands pace elimination, but unfortunately made a break. They got a good price on him at Rito Carlton, winning a gold there in 50 flat. And he's 12-1. And it's first time David Miller. I think this horse has only ever seen Jody Jamieson in the bike. So I kind of like him as a long shot play in here.
Jim, how about you?
Yeah, Jessica covered a lot of them. The Stockade Sealster, I feel the same way. We've had a lot of horses when we've had breeders' crowns and things like that in the past of Pocono coming directly from Canada that do really well in those races. I don't know what the logic for that is, but it's just happened. So, she mentioned David Miller for the first time. Hungry Angel Boy, second tier post in the cane pace. That's always kind of an iffy thing. Race before that went out in 148-2. The outside horses, I think, are going to have their work cut out for them. I think Fulton's pretty solid too. I think the 6, 7, and 8. I don't know. I don't want to say throw out anybody in races of this caliber, but they're really going to have their work cut out for them. And obviously, Confederate, another odds-on favorite in here. Can you beat him in here? That's if you're a value player, you got to look to the inside of him. I think if you want to take a shot at beating the heavy favorite.
Gabe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree there. I think Confederate could give him a 5-length head start, and I'd still take an odds-on price here. I think he's that much the best. Even though the only race he lost this year, in my opinion, was one of the top 3 efforts by any animal in the sport all season. He had a dead cover, 3 wide around the turn there in the North America Cup, and missed, a head right at the light. So, I mean, he raced super. He's got a perfect post here, post 5, the best post in any 5/8 track. We know that. I just don't have the imagination to possibly come up with any scenario where Confederate gets beat. I think he's a slam dunk single. I think Jess is on to something to Stockade Sealster. That could be a little bit of a sleeper in there that could be close to the big price. Christchurch, I tend to think horses maybe second time Lasix get a little better. So maybe he improves, or maybe those fractions are starting to catch up with him, as Jess mentioned. And, even Fulton, who had a no chance spot there in the Adios, from post 9. So he's back at post 4, much better post, but it just looks like a very formful race to me. I think Confederate wins, and I think just a couple to a handful there underneath. So not great in terms of wagering, at least from my opinion.
You're not giving Redwood Hanover any love this week?
Well, he's going to have a lively pace scenario. I think he does race better off of it post 8. I think he's just going to have a big mountain to climb, so that's a concern with them. He tried the front there, the Milstein. He did get torched pretty bad leaving out of there, but I do think the horse is a little better off the pace. And as you know, sitting beside me at the Adios, I was a little disgusted when he got beat there at the wire. I had a nice play in on him. So, hopefully I didn't give up on him too soon.
All right. We're moving right along. We'll go to race 13, our Earl Beal Jr. Memorial, purse of $300,000 for the 3-year-old open trotters. Let's go ahead, Jessica.
I think this is a very interesting race. I think Up Your Deo is an interesting spot in here. He had a month off going into the Hamiltonian elimination, and then he was much better in the Hamiltonian final. I think racing back-to-back weeks helped him. I think showed us something that we haven't seen from him ever, because he was, we only ever see him make one quick move. He's a fast horse, but he doesn't carry his speed very long. And I thought he carried his speed very well in the Hamiltonian final. He was, parked for, that middle half of the mile. He had the lead for a short time. But I think they were, picking it up there, excuse me, in that third quarter just a little bit, and he just simply got out trotted. He was only beaten a length. I know he has post 8, but he has plenty of tactical speed to get off the gate and get involved early on. And he can make a move up the half, past the half to get to the front. So it'll be interesting because there's plenty of horses in here who can mix it up to the inside. Kilmister was good in his Muscle Hill, not very great in that Hamiltonian elimination, but he was also really good in the Stanley Dancer. winner's bet just got him. It'll be interesting to see how Celebrity Bambino bounces back, because he put up the soft fractions in the Hambletonian final and could not out sprint them coming around the last turn, but he was so good in that elimination. As we know, everything has to go right on Hambo Day for them to win, but I was very discouraged with the way he raced there. So I'm not really quite sure where you would want to go in this race. It's so competitive, but I think if you get some value on, that would be where I would go.
Jim, how about you?
I think Jessica nailed it, that this is the race of our 4 big stakes races, those 3-year-old races, that is kind of the one that's up in the air, where you're not going to have a definitive odds on favorite. We've had horses kind of travel the route of Celebrity Bambino before, where they, kind of disappointed in the Hambletonian. They get the week off and they come back and they're strong. So certainly he's a factor. Maybe a sleeper that we haven't mentioned yet is Once in a Lifetime. Raced really well on the 5/8 at Pocono earlier in the meet, coming off another Sire Stakes win. Now, obviously, the caliber competition is a big jump, but certainly could maybe get a trip depending on how the early speed rates out. This is a race where I don't know that there's an easy throw out. Kilmister, struggled in the elimination, but 10 posts, you know what I mean? So now he's got a much better spot there for Marcus Melander. So this is the one that you could recommend just about all 8 of them. And I think for betting value, I think Once in a Lifetime, if I was going to go for the value play, that's probably the direction that I would go.
Gabe, what are you thinking here?
I'm thinking this is one of my favorite betting races on the stakes day. That's not to say I'm not going to bet them all, but this is just going to be one of my favorite spots to bet. But Celebrity Bambino, I still think he's going to get a lot of respect there. I mean, Hambletonian favorite, didn't race bad in the Hambo, raced okay, won a Hambletonian elimination. So I think he's sort of the headliner, so to speak, here, in some of the sophomore trotting colts. And I don't think he's that much better than these other colts. I think you guys are onto something. I think it's a race where he doesn't really have that big of an edge. But I'd like to think he's going to be 6 or 7 to 5 here. I think he's still going to get a lot of toed action. So that's going to, point me, especially in the multi-race bets and everything else, to tee up some of these other colts. I mean, I like a lot of the obvious. I think, will be a decent price just based on his post. I'm like Jess, I was happy with his Hambo effort. I think Kilmister obviously is going to get out there with a nice trip. And then Up Your Dale, he had his shoes off. I know the Hambletonian final as well. He took a ton of play in the Hambletonian final. I mean, think about that. It's the biggest betting race of the year. In the Hambletonian, he had just raced okay in his Hambletonian elimination. They pulled the shoes. He was like 15, 20 to 1 morning line. Forgive me for not remembering right off, but and I thought which was pretty fair. They pulled the shoes in the Hambletonian final. They sent this horse off at 6 to 1. I mean, that takes a massive amount of money in the Hambletonian. So someone out there was very confident in Up Your Dale's chances there that day. And, he raced pretty well. He was only beating a couple of lengths. So, that's another one that I like to watch. But again, I just think Celebrity Bambino is correctly pegged here as the morning line favorite. I think he'll be the favorite. And I think he'll be less than 2 to 1. And I'm going to take some swings in here against him.
All right. It's going to be a tough race to bet, but we'll go on to race 14, which finishes off the card. It's the Always Be Mickey Invitational, going for 100,000. Jessica, do you want to kick it off?
I'm excited for this race. A lot of horses that we've seen kind of maybe take a little bit of off-road to get to where they're at now. But I was really happy to see Allywag finally be able to bounce back in his division of the Sam McKee on Hambo Day. Obviously, after that mishap at Mohawk in the Gold Cup, it took him a little time to recover. He had a lot of stitches in his legs, and I think they gave him enough time off, and he was really good in those 3 starts prior leading up to it. But the fact that he left in 26-3 parked and then sat and was able to come home in 26-4, and for the connections to be confident in him afterwards, saying that he was sound and back to the old Allywag. He had plenty of success in this race. I think he won it 2 years in a row, maybe. I'm really confident in Allywag, but I think there's plenty of plays underneath of him. Tattoo Artist, we all know his game is speed. He was used pretty aggressive in his division of the McKee. He left and was parked in 26-3. He gets an inside post. He's picking up Timmy T this week with Stonebridge Helios, with Dexter opting with Stonebridge Helios. And honestly, I think people might overlook Stonebridge Helios in this spot. I overlooked him last or on Hambo Day because I figured he would need to start after having a month off, and he was as sharp could be. after making his move to the front. I was a little disappointed in Luz Pearlman in the Dan Patch because I thought he was racing well leading up to that. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think this is, I think this is going to be a good betting race underneath the Allywag Hanover.
Jim, what are your thoughts on this race?
Yeah, when I was making the morning line, I really kind of went back and forth on the morning line favorite because Allywag Hanover, Jessica mentioned, he's won this race a couple times in the past. He really likes Pocono and put it together in his last start. But you look at what Stonebridge Helios has been doing and just, clobbering everybody at heavy, odds on favorites, winning from 9 posts. He's been really tough to beat lately. He's 4-year-old going against mostly older in here. So I kind of went back and forth with those two, and I think it probably comes down to those two. But one name I do want to throw out just because, I'm the Pocono guy, I got to be a homer, but none better has Matt Kikeli in the bike. He's going to go off at seriously long odds, but Matt's been the leading driver of Pocono this year. He's the leading driver last year. And Travis Alexander, the trainer, has also been up near the top of our training list for the last several years. So here's a 10-year-old who, is probably not going to get much of a shot, but maybe you throw him in there for the exotics. And Quietly Ideal, some magic, maybe doesn't get the pub as the other ones, but he's got the most earnings of anybody in this field this year. So if you're looking for the real long shot value plays, go to those two outside horses. But I think it comes down to Stonebridge Helios and Allywag Hanover, and maybe a real showdown to close out the day.
Gabe, where are you going in this race?
The good news is I can sit here and listen to a couple of experts for me and almost regurgitate what they say when I agree with them. But no, I'm basically similar thought process here. First thing I'll say is I see a tremendous amount of early speed. So I think Jim's going to have fun calling this race. I think it's going to be an absolute shootout, like buckle your seatbelt type action into the opening turn, because literally all up and down the page, you see these horses can punch out of the gate. I mean, there's 6 figures on the line here. No one is just taking a tour of the oval, so to speak, on Saturday. So I even none better, as Jim just mentioned. Early speed is his weapon of choice. Does he take a shot to leave it in a Shark Tank here from Post 8? I don't know. But he certainly could. I think Jess is on to something. I mean, Allywag Hanover, being in the winner's circle with those guys after the Sam McKee there on Hamiltonian Day, even before we went on air, they were just so happy, and really so confirmed to the point that they thought he was the Allywag Hanover of old. And like Jess said, he had a long road ahead with all the troubles that he had this year. So I think there's definitely a case to be made. It's not going to be easy, though, with all that early speed. What's he going to do in this spot? As Jim said, he likes Pocono too, having a couple of wins in this race. So I think all that helps. Tattoo Artist, I don't want people to be too hard on him. He was second. He was handily beaten by My the Missile, but the third place finisher in that race was 15 lengths back, 10. It was a long way back. So he was clearly second best, and he got beat by a razor sharp horse. So I don't want to be too hard on Tattoo Artist. We're always looking for reasons to beat favorites. As Jess said, I even tried to beat Stonebridge Helios and Hambo Day as well after a month off. But that was his first start against older horses. He's raced against 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds, all restricted companies' entire career. Quite frankly, I know that was an open race on Hamiltonian Day, but he was 4-5 at the month off. So I should tell you, it wasn't the toughest open of all time. So I think, really his first true test against older, veteran, very talented horses. He's obviously very talented too. I don't want to take anything away from him. But I think if you're taking, reasons to try and beat favorites to try to make a score, the case could be made. If the race goes like I think it could, with all this early speed and a complete shootout, Leonidas is a horse that I think that could kind of sit, stalk, and maybe tee himself up late. We've seen him really zip home at the end of some of these miles. So if they really bang one another up, I think Leonidas is the horse that could be loaded up with a little late pace. And if I had to come with a live long shot, so to speak, it would be him. But I think Allywag Hanover is the horse to beat, just based on how confident that everyone seems to be that he is the Allywag Hanover we all know and remember.
All right. Well, since we have time, we are going to go back to race 6 and work out that pick 4. So Jessica, don't kill me. We'll let you
I'm
go.
not gonna kill you. I just gotta scroll all the way up to the top. Hold on.
I'm old school. I got my PPs. I don't do anything online.
Well, I'm at home and we don't have a printer. I live in the middle of nowhere.
So we'll go to race 6, 3-year-old filly pacers. Jim, why don't you kick us off for race 6?
Yeah, we'll let Jessica do her shuffling there and see what we got. Let's see, race 6. So that one, the favorite is Front Page Story, I believe, at 5-2 on the morning line, if I'm looking at my program correctly. And so you got Mark Stacy trainer, Tim Tetrick in the bike. So now we're into these consolation races where you kind of have to lower your expectations of what you're going to get. So here is a filly who hasn't won since back in June, but just based on times and, as somebody making up the morning line odds, that's something I look at because that's what the bettors look at. A lot of bettors, that's kind of what they hone in on. And so hers look a little bit better than everybody's in here. She's got a 149-4 victory at Woodbine, a little bit faster than a lot of these in here. So that's kind of where I went with her. One thing I will say, Jennifer Bongiorno racing hungry. Granted, she's coming from Stallion Series, which is a little lower than the Sire Stakes races in Pocono, but she has been winning everything at Pocono in the last month or so. So if you're going by the hot trainer, that might be the way to go in that 6th race.
Gabe, what about you in this race?
Well, I think Jim is right. I kind of had this one narrowed down to 2. I think Front Page Story and My Little Captain just have the class edge, so to speak, on these. And I do think Jim is properly pegged the morning line. I think Front Page Story is going to be a shorter price than My Little Captain. I don't think there's going to be a tremendous amount of difference between those two, but I think Front Page Story is. What I will say is they raced against each other 2 and 3 starts back, and they finished kind of right with one another. There's not been that much of a difference between them. However, My Little Captain, 2 back went off at 9-2 in the Tompkins gears. Front Page Story went off 33-1. 3 back in the Mistletoe Chalet. My Little Captain went off, 30-1. The other horse went off 80-1. So I think it's going to flip-flop this time. As Jim said, I think Front Page Story is going to get the action. I just don't think there's much separating these two fillies. So you may get double the price, 2-1, 5-2 on My Little Captain. Post 5, perfect post. I think if you get double the value out of My Little Captain, that's the way I would lean, because I have it as a 2-horse race. I'll probably use them both to some degree to start the pick for.
Jessica, what are your thoughts on this race?
I'm gonna agree with them on Front Page Story. Obviously you go back to with Charleston in that race, she hit the wire with her nose on it, and it was a hard photo, it was a long deciphering photo. And then when you get put up against, Sylvia Hanover, I mean, she finished 4th by 7, but it wasn't like, Sylvia Hanover, Beach Cowgirl, or pacing away from the field. A horse in here that does intrigue me is the horse that's going to start from post 8 Quickie, Brett Pelling, Todd McCarthy, 8 for 8 this season after being 0 for 2 last year. But she really hasn't faced much stakes company. She has faced, that Stallion Series, but she's super sharp. And I think when you look at horses coming into races like this, that you can't knock the sharpness of them when they are coming into the race. She won at Pocono from post 7 last time out by a head to Hello Yes Hi, who was, I believe, a Sire Stake horse at one point, paced in 51 and change. She's got the tactical speed early off of the gate. So I think this is an interesting play. 5-1 on the morning line. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with her, because I think her sharpness going into this race might outdo a few others that might have a few other class that might be, back class, but maybe not beating the horses necessarily.
All right, we'll get started with race 7, another consolation for 3-year-old filly trotters, a purse of 125,000. But before we do your picks, just reminding everyone that's just now tuning in, you can get your free PPs now at phha.org, so you can follow along, mark it up, and get in on the wagering action on Saturday for Sun Stakes Saturday. So Jim, you want to kick us off with race 7 here?
Yeah, and before I do that, I just want to go back to race 6 real quick. Jessica mentioned Quickie. That might be the horse that ends my track announcing career if she does end up winning on Saturday, because that's a tough one to call without coming up with some kind of innuendo behind it. So let's hope we can pull that off. Race number 7. It's an interesting one. This is one of those, I had favorite morning line favorite of 3-1. Whenever you see that, for me, it means that I had a hard time kind of coming up with a definitive favorite. I think Fashion Annie, were it not for the post, I think, if it were all things were equal in a vacuum, I think she's number 1 in this field. But, Tim Tetrick's going to have to overcome that post. Hard on Fire, I made the favorite based on the fact that she was in the Hambo Oaks, and I think people are going to gravitate to that. And then there's a couple in here that, potential wise, we saw them early in the season, the Bobby Weiss series here. We saw Bella Macchiato, we saw Kadari. Kadari looks so good right off the bat to start her season, and then, you know, kind of scuffled a little bit, was beaten as a favorite here a couple starts back. So it'll be interesting to see if she can kind of pull back to where she was early in the season. But I think she'll get some attention. She's got that 5-post. Gabe mentioned the 5-post, so big here on the 5/8. So she could certainly be one to watch.
Gabe, what are your thoughts for race 7?
I'd like to plead the fifth. I don't want to give out my pick for race 7. No, I'm actually joking. I have my best bet of the day in the 7th race, guys, and my best bet of the meet at Pocono, and my best bet. No one has to ask me if I won on Sun Stakes Saturday if this horse gets beat, because I can assure you that I lost, because I am going full tilt, all in, every pull, every which way you can go. And it's a 3 Bella Macchiato. And I'm a little concerned that with some of the other logicals you're drawing outside, she might take a little more play than I would like her to take. If she doesn't, then I'm going to give her a lot more play. But this Bella Macchiato, they pulled the shoes for the first time in the Hamiltonian Oaks elimination. Absolutely flying. She was going to make the final. She's going to be very, very close. She made a break in stride. It was the first time with the shoes off. We know that helps 90% of the horses. For whatever reason, there's a little issue there. Nancy referenced something there with that, that she thought did, trouble her a little bit, when they pulled the shoes. So they put the shoes back on last time, the Continental Victory, when she made that break in stride, and she went into, she ran into every roadblock in North New Jersey in the Continental Victory, much to my wagering bankroll's detriment. But she was absolutely loaded. She had a ton of trot. The only thing is we were coming off back-to-back breaks in stride. Dexter may have to be a little cautious here. But again, she ran over top of a horse in the Continental Victory. It was not her fault. She made a break. They pulled the shoes in the Hamiltonian Oaks elimination. I'm hoping those 2 breaks inflate her price, but she's had perfect alibis for both those breaks in stride. I think she's an absolute jog burger in this spot. I'm going to single her and everything. And a couple of other notes, Heart on Fire, keep in mind, she had to remove Lasix for the Hamiltonian. So she's been off Lasix a couple of starts. I think going back to Lasix could help her. But as Jim said, Hamiltonian Oaks lines, winning that elimination is probably going to hurt the price on her a little bit. And the other thing I'll say, if you take the Hamiltonian Oaks line off her chart, she'd be 6, 7, 8 to 1 in here. I mean, she did race exceptional on the Hamiltonian Oaks, but keep in mind the rail opened up. Everyone in the world pulled off the pylon. She got to shoot right through. Not taking anything away, she raced good. But is one start enough to hammer a horse down to the favorite? I mean, even I feel like going for a run like once a year and feel like I'm ready to do something. So, I mean, I just don't want to overact on one line. If you remove that Hamiltonian Oaks elimination, I think she's a much bigger price in here. I think that people are still going to overreact to that. But that's a favorite I'm trying to beat. Bella Macchiato, my send it in special on Sun Stakes Saturday.
Well, there you heard it. Jessica, what are your thoughts?
I don't like Bella Macchiato.
Wow. Told me right under the bus.
I'm there.
Oh, that's what you really feel.
I don't.
Text me what you want to bet off camera, by the way, and we'll bet this privately as well.
I just find this a very competitive race with horses that I think could pop up and win any which way. Sure, if Bella Macchiato pulls it together and doesn't run this week, I think she had a very solid start to her season at the Meadows and at the Poconos and at the Meadowlands. And I think she just kind of, tailed off there, those 2 breaks. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how she is driven, because I think she will have to be driven a little bit conservatively coming off of those 2 breaks. Heart on Fire, if she, she was really good in the elimination, back on Lasix. Fashion Annie, I think the post does hurt her a bit here. I'm really curious to see how the Wise One will be in here. 4 of 6 on the season, did face Stakes Company in the Reynolds back on July the 1st, but was in, some tough company there. Bond, obviously. Bella Macchiato is in there. Royal Philly. I think maybe this might suit her racing style a little more. She has plenty of gate speed. You could probably make a case for 4 or 5 of them in here. I think this is a very competitive consolation. It'll be interesting to see. I really do like Fashion Annie. I think the post is going to hurt her just a little bit, but if it sets up for her, it looks like she has plenty of diversity in her racing style.
It'll be an interesting race to shake out, that's for sure. We'll go to race 8 for the 3-year-old Open Pacers, one of the consolations again on the card with a $200,000 purse. Jim, why don't you go ahead and tell us your thoughts?
Morning line favorite there is Ken Hanover, and horses for courses. He has raced superb at Pocono this year. He's won several stakes races at the track. And then last week he came out here and you look at it and you say, well, he lost in a conditioned pace. That's not so great, but he is up against the best of the best pacers, aged pacers. He got beat by a 10-year-old horse and Joe Star of Mia, who's been real tough here this year. And so that's not as bad a loss as I think people might think. So I think he's going to be favored another 5 posts there. Outside, Ammo gets the rough post. Another time where the post different, he would have been, the odds would have been lower. Command certainly has the capability to go a big mile. If you're really looking for a flyer, maybe Gateway Guy, he comes from Harrington, so I think people might discount him right off the bat, but it's a half-mile oval. He was 10 lengths back at the quarter. He has to go 3 wide in his last start, $110,000 purse. He comes from behind, he wins by 3. So you can't just go by the time there, 153 and 3. You have to kind of chop a couple seconds off that to compare to what these horses are doing on the 5/8 or even the 7/8 or the mile. So, as a value play, that's one to watch. But I think Ken Hanover, if he's on his game, he'll be tough here for Roland Maller.
Gabe, what are your thoughts on this race?
And not my favorite race because, not what I have a strong opinion on. And I tend to lean towards the chalk, unfortunately, in this race. I think that the logicals of the horses, to really choose from. I'm like Jim. Ken Hanover's going to be tough. I'll certainly use him in all my business. The horse that could possibly get off, I guess, a little bit of an overlay, at least in my mind, just because of his post, is Ammo. I know that prior to the Tompkins start 2 back, all the rage was that Ammo had trained unbelievably when adding Lasix. They really thought that was the key to try and get him back on track. He was airborne in that Tompkins start. He was raced conservatively, hadn't been racing well. It was like they wanted him to finish up well. He just missed. So I came back and did try him there underneath in the cane. I suppose I can give him an alibi for that. He was used very hard leaving the race, an impossible type field. So maybe the Lasix is still going to, pick Ammo back up to, be the colt we all thought he could be this year's. Last year's upset Breeders' Crown winner, obviously. But, I'm like Jim, it's the logicals here for me. Again, I'll probably just go sort of bomb-proof, play it a little safe here in terms of the multi-race bets. But, if I hone in, I'll be looking at that board. If Ammo's up there at 9-2, 5-1, which I highly doubt he will be. But if he is, that's where I may take a swing, at least on the verticals of the race.
Jessica, what are your thoughts?
I like Ken Hanover. I think, he added Lasix in June, and I think that really helped him, although he was, pretty solid before adding Lasix, and he's put up some very tough miles. Like Jim said, he was beat by a 10-year-old in an hours of 20,000 last time out. Tim E.T. will be back in the bike, but I actually think that Annapolis Hanover will go off at, close to 10-1. This horse has been very good this season, 3 of 8 on the season. And obviously this horse had some issues in the North American Cup, a limb there, in the Messenger final where they went right to the Messenger, because then they gave him plenty of time off before adding Lasix. So that's an indicator to me that he was bleeding for a while before they added Lasix, maybe not showing it necessarily, but they gave him plenty of time off to heal, to let his lungs properly heal. And he's come back with 2 good qualifiers. He qualified in 55, and then he came back just 7 days later and qualified in 53 and 1. So I think this would be an interesting play. I like horses first and third time Lasix. 2 qualifiers is Lasix under his belt. To be third time he gets Lasix. Hunter Myers is very familiar with the horse. He has an outside post. He's very versatile. I think he'll offer the best value in this race.
Like that my Meadows horse is going to love. We'll go to race 9. Jim, you want to go ahead for race 9?
Yeah, so consolation 1 of the Earl Beal Jr. Memorial, and another race where I had a hard time picking a favorite. I made Crown the 3-1 favorite, but I'm not that confident that he will be favored. I feel like there's 3 or could be, comes from Melander barn, big yearling purchase price, just necked out last time out at Yonkers. And the time looks good. Then when you think you think about it being at Yonkers, you take a couple seconds off that. But one horse I want to talk about that I think it could be interesting here is number 2, Father Stosh. Jill Rowland, the trainer's done well at Pocono. And you look at this colt, he wasn't doing much. He was up the track several races, breaking stride. And then the third, non-winners 5 at Harris. Okay. Then last time out, second at the Meadows, closing 27-4, 153 and 4 mile. And so maybe just little by little coming into his own. And another one, Tyler Buter, another driver here who knows the Pocono Oval very intimately. Let's see if Father Stosh could be a nice value in that 9th race.
Gabe, what are your thoughts on this race?
Yeah, this is a tricky race. I look for, again, reasons to try and see if we can swing against a short price. I don't think the 3 Devil to Shield, who's going to be one of the favorites, gets off the gate all that well. That always concerns me a little bit going to a 5/8 track. Crown can be tricky at times. He's made a break or two here and there. I'm actually going to key up a bomber in here and take a big swing at a price. This Ohio bred colt here on the outside, Full Count, is actually a pretty good trotter. He was a good second there last out. John Dutton is a real trotter. And he was a good second to him last out at Northfield. That was his first start with Lasix, second start Lasix here. In a field when a lot of these horses seem to maybe have to try to take it a little easy off the gate, be a little cautious. I think try and stay on the trot. I think Dave Miller might have the lights on and the horn blowing here from that outside post. I just think this horse could cross right over, track close somewhere up there. And even if he hangs around for a slice, the horse is probably going to be 25-30 to 1 in this spot. So, I've certainly seen worse propositions at big odds. So I'm sort of taking a little swing here in terms of the exotics with Black Magic to be somewhere in the mix.
Jessica, where are you going on this race?
I agree with Gabe. I think this is a tricky race. And I do agree. I was keeping my eye on Devilish Hill. I think the horse is finally rounding into the horse that they thought he was going to be, but he does lack, the ability to get off of the gate on the right foot, or just sluggish a little bit off the gate. Crown was much better in his New York Sire Stakes action when he was second by a neck to Kierkegaard. And Crantini is a horse I've just always been a fan of. Started off the season a little on the struggle bus, I think, making breaks. They did some equipment changes. 5-1 on the morning line, Mark McDonald in the bike. It'll be interesting. I think he's finally back to the Crantini he was last year when he faced, a lot of those big dogs. He does have an outside post, but he is one who actually can get off of the gate very well. So I'm going to use Crantini and hope to get a good price on him, as a few of those others to the inside would probably take some money.
Well, and then we're right back where we started. So that is it for our Sun Stakes fields. Anyone Sun Stakes Saturday, August 19th at Mohegan, Pennsylvania. So you'll see Jessica in the winner's circle. Jim will be up there announcing. Gabe will be throwing in his bets. So
I'll be right here watching on the RTN network all day long, firing away. So you guys enjoy your day. It's going to be a lot of fun. What a great card. It's always one of my favorite days of the year to hang out and get to watch a good card. So I know Jess will do a great job as always. Jim will do a great job with the mic, and you'll be there too, I'm assuming, Donnell.
I'll be there. We'll be at the PHRA booth. So if you are at Sun Stakes Saturday, stop at the PHRA booth. We have some giveaways, some really nice merchandise for sale. So we'll be there. Stop and say hi. But
If Bubba Macchiato loses, please feel free to send me your condolences after race 6.
I'll send you a picture of the winner.
Yeah, please do that. And I will send you a picture of my tickets after race 7 when he gets there first.
Well, thank you for everyone for tuning in, and thank you to our guests for being on here tonight. Everyone have a good night.